What's up, gang? Welcome into Dog Central, a rare Sunday show. Well, I guess a rare off-season Sunday show. Good to be with you guys. Hope you're all doing well, whether you're out enjoying the lake or the beach or sitting on your couch watching the British Open. We are getting close to college football. We are now 5 Saturdays away from college football being played. And I spent this week in Dallas at SEC Media Days, which always kind of creeps up in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of summer, kind of, arrives out of nowhere. And then all of a sudden it's here and it feels like it's a sprint to the season. And then once we hit the season, it's like, you blink and it's Halloween, and then you blink again and it's Christmas and New Year's, and it's gone. So doing a lot of prep work here on the Dog Central side to get ready for the year. 24 for 24 is really going to pick up steam here over the next month, get those rolling out, get that countdown done. For those of you that are unfamiliar or don't remember from last year, 24 for 24 is kind of our long form style, or my long form style preview of the season, looking at key players, key coaches, and sort of, their careers to this point, and also the challenges they're going to have to overcome if Georgia wants to win a third national title in 4 years. What's up, Harry? Happy Sunday to you. Hope all you guys in the comments are doing well. Hop in if you're around. I'm going to go through SEC Media Days and kind of talk about some takeaways, talk about my preseason ballot that I put in last week. But if you guys have any specific questions, feel free to shoot them in. I don't have a ton. I didn't take user questions from the forum for this week. So if you guys have any live that you want to get on the show, happy to answer those for you. Before we get into that, we got a little package here from our friends at Homefield Apparel. For those of you that are not familiar with my history, I am a pretty big nerd when it comes to the college football video game. I have not played any other video games in like almost a decade, but I did go out and buy like an old PS3 and NCAA 14, which was the last version of that game, and download College Football Revamped in the middle of COVID just to kind of get by. I also, one of the first written pieces I ever did that got any real attention was back in the offseason after the 2019 season. I ran Georgia's offense in the CFB revamped game, sort of under the premise of, can I do a better job than James Coley? I thought the answer was yes at the time. James Coley's now back in Athens, which is an odd twist of fate. Hope he doesn't hate me for that piece. It was a pretty tongue-in-cheek. I thought it was funny. Blutarski thought it was funny. I don't know. It was a good time. But all right, so the idea here is that our friend Josh, who is also a Georgia grad, Georgia fan. So, if you guys haven't bought from Homefield, go support Josh. Go support a fellow Bulldog. But our friend Josh sent me a mystery package with 3 T-shirts in it. I don't know what they are. Depending on the 3 shirts in here, I have to pick one of them for my first stop as offensive coordinator in my CFB 25 dynasty. So I'm praying I don't get Vanderbilt or Rutgers or, I don't even know. I guess like Homefield's got so many shirts. I could get UC Santa Barbara banana slugs in here and have to create a school. But I'm hoping to get just like one mid-tier Power 5 program in this package. So let's go. Let's see what we got without further ado. If I can open this thing. I'm really bad at opening packages. It's an odd thing to say about yourself, but it's true. All right. What do we got here? All right. We got some stickers. That's good. Ooh, something light blue. Do we have viewing? Oh, we got Dayton. Does Dayton have a football program? I don't know. Do you guys know? Probably not. Decent basketball program. All right. So we did Dayton. We're going to have to create a school. Let's hope it's not Dayton. What do we got here? Oh, yeah. We have Rutgers Scarlet Knights. Am I going to be a Schiano man? Agent saying Greg Schiano is hot after your boy. I don't know, coach. Not a big New Jersey guy. All right, so I got one more. All right, so right now I'm stuck with Dayton and Rutgers. It's hard out here for your boy. Let's see what we got here. Oh, thank God. All right, NC State. Dad's coming home. We're going Carter Finley. Wolfpack in the house, baby. One of the more underrated home environments in the country. Let's go. Grayson McCall. That offense is, been a lot of run on first, run on second, pass on third for a while now. So I think I can come in, provide some immediate improvement, which is always good for job security. NC State, let's do this thing. If you guys are into the video game, I'll be posting stuff about it on the YouTube channel and all that. I have played it now a few times. There was some of us media members who kind of gathered up like teenagers in Dallas last week and sat around a hotel room TV and played the game, and we had a lot of fun with it. Shout out Chris Phillips. Shout out Brad Crawford. Yeah, I played a couple online games over the weekend, and it's really like satisfying to go and make a fourth quarter last minute drive and beat some kid like that's talking shit nonstop and has no manners and a vulgar mouth and is just like talking through his little headset, and you're not saying anything the entire time, and then you go in and do your thing. That's right, Harry. Saved by the Wolfpack. Who thought they would ever say that sentence, right? But look, NC State is better than Rutgers, certainly better than Dayton, who, again, I do not know if they have a football program. All right. Getting into SEC Media Days, which I know is probably what a lot of you guys are here for. I thought that just in general, like last year when Kirby came to Media Days, I was very impressed by his just command of kind of that stage and that building and all of that. But like there was also still this dynamic of Saban being in the league still and kind of, Saban, I think we all knew he was certainly moving towards the end of his career going into last season, but I think most people were pretty surprised when he retired. So there certainly wasn't a vibe there of like, oh, this is it for Nick, right? Now we are in this post-Saban era, and one of the things that was just really interesting was Kirby's doing his speech. All the coaches are doing their speech, and Nick is sitting in the back corner of the room at the at the SEC Network desk and kind of looking on. And while Kirby's talking, he's talking towards Nick, and he's talking about how much he's learned from him and how he wouldn't be where he is without him. And that part is interesting just because Nick is still an employee at the University of Alabama. Like, I mean, he says he hasn't been in the office, but I'm sure the office comes to him if they need some advice. I wonder if he's gotten on the phone with a recruit or if he's, helped kind of settle any worries that have gone on out there from different people. It seems like Alabama's NIL and all of that stuff is doing well. Obviously, their high school recruiting is going fantastic, which is not surprising when, you've got like 40 spots that open up in one offseason because of the guys that portaled out. But still, it was just weird because there's kind of this clear affection. I think affection is certainly the right word. I mean, there's respect and all that too, but there is, Nick Saban, I think, has respect for a lot of people. A lot of people have respect for Nick Saban, but there is a legitimate affection that exists between him and Kirby Smart, which is odd because, Kalen DeBoer came to town the next day on Wednesday, and he also said nice things about Nick Saban on the podium, and there was all of that. But I don't know. It's just like, it feels like there's this relationship there between Kirby and Nick, and then there's the relationship that Nick is kind of currently deployed to have. I'm curious to see how that pans out over the season. I think Saban obviously is fantastic on TV, so we'll see how he does, and whether any of those dynamics come into play at all is going to be very interesting to me, I suppose. But looking at Georgia's side of things, I thought, Kirby's really good at standing on that stage and using it to deliver whatever message he wants to get across to his team. The whole no assumptions thing, that seems to be the moniker for this year for Georgia. You had a better never rest last year. You've had different stuff going back all the way to keep chopping in 2017, right? Like that was kind of the theme of that season. And at the end of the Rose Bowl, when Georgia beat Oklahoma and came from behind, like that was the first thing everybody started saying was, we kept chopping. So the no assumptions thing, I think, is a healthy place for Georgia to be in, considering the success they've had. They are the most, I think, talented team. I think they are the team with the most known commodities in college football. They also have probably the toughest schedule in the country, outside of Florida, maybe. But yeah, they can go and they have the chance to win every game, and maybe they should win every game. But also navigating the 16-17 game season, I think, while playing some of these big opponents like Texas, Alabama, Ole Miss, like Georgia's going to be really good at getting up for big games and, hopefully winning those games for their sake, and then getting back down and not letting that stuff go to their head. And I think Smart obviously has been around a lot of teams and kind of knows what that gauntlet will look like as best as anyone can. It'll be interesting to see sort of how they navigate that, especially if they are able to, go out and beat Clemson handedly. Like, great, that's good, and I think Kirby's always done a really good job of keeping his guys between confident, but not letting them skew all the way over to cocky. And I think that is the balance that Georgia's going to have to really maintain week to week with this schedule in order to do what they want to do and get where they want to go and win a third title in 4 years. I didn't see Starks or Michael Williams say anything that really surprised me or shocked me. Kirby, I thought, was very kind of honest, truthfully, about just where his program is. And, I didn't see him try to overplay how good they are and how good they can be. I also didn't see him shy away from that or downplay it either. I did ask him a question about sort of, how do you guys – I really was curious, like, how are they going to manage kind of wear and tear throughout the season and depth throughout the season with the potential to play as many as 17 games. And if you win, if you're going to a national title game, you're going to play probably at least 16 games, assuming that, you play a conference championship game as well. But, if you lost an SEC title, then you could conceivably play 17 games this year. That is a lot of football. And Georgia has, I think, recruited depth as well as anybody, but in the past, you've seen them use a Vanderbilt or, use kind of a lesser opponent, right, as practice, really. Like the Kent State game that they had a couple years ago that some people in the national media made a big deal out of and started asking, like, what's wrong with Georgia? It's like, what's wrong with Georgia is that, their staff is literally taken the settings and turned it to Heisman difficulty. And they are, asking their team to run against a heavy box. They're asking their team to throw against, bad numbers matchups in the secondary. Like, they are asking them to do all the things that they haven't gotten good at yet, so they can be good at them when they play games that against opponents that are actually capable of beating them. And I am just very curious if that philosophy is going to continue on into this year, or if it's going to be like, hey, we got Texas next week, or Bama, or Ole Miss, or even Tennessee, or Auburn, or Kentucky. Like, those are all teams that can put you into a physical game. Why don't we get Carson out at halftime? why don't we just go out there, blow out this team, go up 35 and sit everybody and let other guys play. And, Kirby kind of alluded to how they always try to play young players and get guys into games. And he's right about that. Like, even in these games that I'm talking about against lesser opponents, they certainly are rotating. I mean, they're playing 70, 80 guys sometimes against an FCS team or against a lower tier FBS team or even against Vanderbilt. Like, and they're rotating them into the game early, but they're also still kind of rotating some starters and some contributors in late. So I'm curious to see if that stops. And Kirby did say, hey, we develop depth in practice. And it seems like they are trying to be, I think, conscientious of how hard do we practice to get better versus not being tired on game day. I think that at this point, as far in as Kirby is, he's kind of figured that balance out. But I will be very interested to see sort of what the cadence is of younger players early in the season. And, Kirby did kind of also, I think, bring up the fact of probably the best way to develop depth at Georgia is practicing, is having these young guys practice against players who are, future NFL draft picks or, all conference kind of selection type guys. Like, and he's right about that. They are going to learn more. A freshman offensive lineman is going to learn more going against a senior defensive tackle who is a few months away from being selected by the NFL than they're going to learn from going out and playing, FCS East or whoever it is. So be interesting to see that. I think in general, Kirby kind of just strikes me as very secure. And, there was questions about with the way last season ended and not making the playoff, not winning a national title, is that more motivation going into this year? And he said pretty plainly, like, I've never used a past season success or failure as, that's never informed the way we go into the next season. And he's right about that. Like, going back to when he took the stage in 2022 in Atlanta at media days, it was, we will not be hunted here. And I think that that's going to continue. Kirby, for all the things that he does well, for all the things that people talk about him doing well, probably what he does best, honestly, is sort of tweak those dials on his players and figure out, we're a little nonchalant right now, or we're a little too keyed up right now, and find the balance between those two things. So, I don't know how the season's going to play out for Georgia, obviously, but I do think just the big games that are on the schedule and the attention that those games are going to draw in. Normally you have like one of those games a year, and Georgia's going to have at least two, probably three, maybe four of those kind of games where it feels like, this is the big test. This is where we're going to find out a lot about who these teams are and that kind of narrative. And I think all of the, sports nutrition, sports psychologist type people that Kirby relies on, they'll probably come more in handy this year than ever before. So I guess the last thing that really stood out to me in terms of interacting with Georgia at SEC Media Days, there's two. One, the collective fining thing, or, they try to come out and say that's not fining. And I guess if you're withholding payment, it's not fining. Obviously, they don't want a lawyer to come in and say, you guys are treating these guys like employees, which they shouldn't. That's smart. I alluded to that, honestly, on the last show that I did when the driving arrest stuff kind of popped up a couple weeks ago. I sort of said, like, all these guys are paying for these cars with NIL money. Why don't you hit them where it hurts in the pocketbook? Maybe that will work. It seems like they've been doing that, and we're still sort of having some of these driving issues that pop up in the news. I don't know. I don't really I don't dislike it, certainly. I think that it's fine if, excuse me, I think it's fine if Georgia, wants to do that with the NIL. Like, I mean, there's a standard or a code of conduct at any business that you work at. I know that these guys aren't employees, but also these contracts, they're not normal contracts. Like, you see guys break NIL deals all the time. They don't end up in court for breaking their contract without cause, or for not fulfilling their contract. They just move on with their lives. So I don't have any issue with it. I think it's a good thing if it deters these guys from doing stupid things, and I think it's a really good thing if it encourages them to show up in class and be where they're supposed to be, and be accountable to the people that it's good for them to be accountable to. Last thing from Georgia, and this might be honestly the most important thing that I saw, is just Carson Beck right now versus when we had him for post game interviews at G Day 2023. So, what, like 16 months ago? Yeah, maybe 15, whatever it is. But in that time period, he's gone from, he's still a quiet guy, and he still kind of strikes you as more of an introverted person. He's certainly not like, he doesn't ever seem thrilled to be talking to the media, but his comfort level of talking to the media has really changed. Like, it's very much night and day in terms of just how relaxed he looks. And I think he feels comfortable saying uh, whatever he wants to say, really. I thought it was interesting. He made the comment about, somebody asked him about the driving stuff, and he was like, yeah, I like nice cars, but I also don't drive like an idiot. In all this time that we've been following this story with Georgia and the driving and all that, like, we've seen a lot of guys come out and say, this has to get better. We can't do this. This is a poor reflection on our team. This isn't who we are. We haven't really seen anybody come out and be like, this is idiotic, right? Which is kind of what he's saying. And I think that kind of speaks to his security in terms of where he falls on his own team, and his comfort level of being able to say what he feels. And I think that is a good thing for Georgia. I think it is, he talked a lot about just trying to take on more of a leadership role this offseason, and how sometimes that's vocal, but for him, I think it's also more about, doing the right things and leading workouts and getting guys together. And my, by all accounts that I had gotten even before media days, like, he's been doing those things. He's been organizing throwing sessions. He's kind of kept his receivers group together this offseason. He's been great in terms of player organized workouts and some of the things that go on this time of year. I do think you look at Michael Williams going from a kid who's obviously been super talented since he stepped on campus, but kind of a quiet kid, certainly not a guy who I think loved being in front of a microphone. And now he's doing those things, and he's at an event like SEC Media Days, and he's very comfortable saying, we didn't play up to our standard as a defensive line last year. You've got Starks, you've got all these guys that seem to be very much on the same page. And I've heard stories recently within the last couple of weeks of, off-season workout type stuff where coaches aren't around, and you've got some of these upperclassmen type leaders really challenging younger players coming into the program and saying, this level of effort isn't good enough. You need to be pushing yourself one more rep. Like, this isn't how we do things here. And if you can't cut it here, if you can't do this, that's fine. You're not the only person who can't, but you need to go. There's always been leaders within Georgia's program. There's always been the Cedric Van Prans and the, going back to Bellamy and Carter and these guys who took that responsibility on. I don't think that in my time of covering Georgia, or in my time of covering Kirby Smart, I don't think I've seen a Georgia team, or I've seen the program get to this place where it is right now, where it seems like there's not really one leader or two leaders that are kind of taking on the responsibility of being the unpopular guy. Like, the unpopular guy is the guy who isn't doing things the right way. And the guys who have been there for a year or two or more, they're the ones that are coming in and looking at the underclassmen and saying, if you can't do this, get out. And this is just how we do things now. And I think that Kirby Smart's culture, Georgia's culture, has become so ingrained at this point that they've really gotten to that spot of, we are doing things the right way, and if you don't do things the right way, then you're not going to really fit in here. Instead of saying, hey, I don't want to be the asshole here, but I'm going to be the asshole here and tell you guys to do things the right way. So will be interesting to see what that looks like on the field, how that bonds these guys together. I do think Georgia's going to find themselves in some fourth quarter games this year with the schedule they're going to play. I didn't think they'd find themselves in a four-quarter game with South Carolina last year. I didn't think they'd find themselves in a four-quarter game with Auburn last year either. Like, those things kind of pop up out of nowhere sometimes. But I do think that, Georgia, whether it's the ones we expect or not, they're going to play some tough games and they're going to get challenged. And they are, in that spot where everybody wants to be the team that breaks that streak. I mean, they haven't lost a regular season game since November of 2000. I don't even know if I'm trying to think, like, with Saban gone and Muschamp on staff at Georgia, I don't think there's an active SEC coach right now who's beaten Georgia in a regular season game or in a postseason game, actually, because Saban's gone. So everybody's going to want to break that. It's going to have been over 1,000 days since Georgia lost a regular season game when they start the season and when they go to Kentucky in week 3 on the road to start their conference schedule. So we'll find out. But I think if you're a Georgia fan and you're looking at going into fall camp, I would be excited, because I think that you have a team that is kind of built pretty strongly from a character standpoint. And I expect that to have an impact on the season. Jeff asks, has he lost to an active coach? I'm trying to think, Jeff. Let's see. In 2020, they lost to Mullen and Saban. 2019, they lose to Orgeron and Muschamp. 2018, Malzahn. Malzahn would be the active coach that he's lost to. Kirby lost to Malzahn in 2017 on the road at Auburn, right? But Malzahn's at UCF now, but he is still an active coach. But no, he hasn't lost to that's kind of crazy to think about. That somebody fact check me on that if you're watching right now. But unless I'm forgetting something, they went 29-1 in 2021 and 2022, and lost only to Saban last year. So, yeah, if you take out those losses to Saban, Kirby hasn't really lost to anybody in like 6 years, 7 years, other than Mullen. That's it. You compare his first 7 years here in Athens to even what Saban did early in his career. I know Saban kind of won more national titles early on than Kirby did, but Georgia's really been like in the hunt going into the final weekend of the season every other, every year, literally, which I don't even think Alabama, you could really say that about at times. Harry, good point. Hugh Freeze got him in 2016. That's it. So, yeah, there's not a coach at their current school who has beaten them, but Freeze got him in 16 and almost got him again last year, if we're being honest about it. that is one that I'm curious about as we move into this season. I know Georgia gets them at home, which is a big deal when you're playing Auburn. But if you look at the last two times that Hugh Freeze and Kirby Smart have faced off, and then you go back to the Georgia-Alabama games in 2014 and 2015, Freeze, they beat them back-to-back years and all that. Like, Hugh has kind of had the number of that Kirby defense, of the Saban tree defense, whatever you want to phrase it as, going back over, basically a decade now. So be interested to see if Georgia has anything kind of up their sleeve to reverse that trend. Obviously, they did that very differently last year with sort of the run game and misdirection stuff that they did in the run game compared to what they did a decade ago at Ole Miss, but still effective, right? All right. Other SEC Media Days takeaways, and I do have maybe the best way to do this would be to kind of just go down my my ballot here of SEC Media Days. Predicted order of finish. Let's do that. Share. Here we go. All right. So this was my ballot at Media Days 1 through 16. Georgia is the clear number one, however you want to slice it right now. Like, they have the least amount of questions. I know they have the coaching turnover. They lost 4 coaches. The last time they lost 4 coaches, they went and won a national title in 2021. So, I mean, I am interested to see. There are things I want answers to with Georgia, particularly on the defensive line. There are things that I want answers to with Georgia, for all the hype about Jared Wilson. How does he replace Cedric Van Pran at center? Like, there are practical questions. I'm not saying that they're some unbeatable juggernaut rolling into the season, but they are certainly the team that seems most likely to succeed, right? Alabama, I went into SEC Media Days, honestly, guys, probably expecting to vote Texas second, and then some combination of Alabama and Ole Miss third and fourth. I left Media Days lower on Texas, and while I was going through my ballot process, both for first team and second team, first team offense, defense, and all that stuff, and through this, I still think Alabama's got some things on the core that they could, like, if DeBoer, I'll put it this way, if DeBoer is able to do something with Jalen Milroe and help him take this leap and help Milroe become the guy, like, become a passer who is effective doing something besides throwing balls, which is all he's been effective to at this point in his career from a passing standpoint. I don't care. I know that's going to piss some people off. I don't give a shit. Go look at the numbers. That's what he's good at. He ran a boom or bust offense last year against, opposite side of a defense that was fantastic and incredible and had 3, top 50 draft picks playing corner and safety, and Caleb frickin' Downs, who will be a all-pro in the NFL for a decade. Like, Bama didn't have to go win shootouts last year. Now, this year they might, because if you look at their returning production, it is, some duct tape and some wire, and I'll be curious to see how they wrap that duct tape around that wire. But I know Damani Jackson was a 5-star at one point in his career. He transferred from USC to Bama. Keon Sabb could be a good player. He was at Michigan. Didn't see a ton of time, but, like, other than Malachi Moore, there's no dudes taking the field who have played a bunch of football. And I think that is going to be problematic potentially for them, because I think that they could get sucked into some shootout style games. And I don't know if you can win shootout style games if you can't, like, take small chunks consistently and sort of control the football. And Bama, I'm curious to see if they can do that with Jalen Milroe at quarterback and how things play out. We'll find out. Ole Miss, I left Media Days higher on Ole Miss than I came in, particularly when I was doing my voting for SEC Media Days and kind of going through, hey, like who's the best tight end in the league? Who belongs on this list of DBs? I think their safeties are probably a little better than I remembered. The offensive line is going to be the big question for me after seeing what Georgia did to them in the trenches last year. But I know they came into that game with a lot of injuries, so I'm leaving that as a little bit of an open-ended question. I also think, Jackson Dart actually kind of falls into that category of Milrow, where he's sort of, he's either hitting a big chunk play down the boundary or he's just kind of an intermediate. He's a mediocre passer in the short to intermediate ranges, but using his legs can kind of supplement that and make up for it. I don't know what they will ultimately be, but I think their ceiling is actually very high. And I think that, their defensive depth is not going to be great, but their starting 11 on defense is going to be very, very good. And I think that's enough for them to win most of their games. I think that's enough for them to. I don't think they're going to beat Georgia. I'll say that right now, but maybe the way this helmet communication thing works, like that could really help a Lane Kiffin offense as well. So we'll find out. But I like Ole Miss better than Texas, and the reason I like Ole Miss better than Texas is because at the end of the day, I think Jackson Dart is a better quarterback than Ewers because he at least brings a downfield presence and some mobility to things. He also, I think, brought in, Ewers, I'll be honest, like he's just not, like being around him, it's just, he's not a very in the spotlight kind of person, which is fine. Like not everybody is and all of that. Like that's great. You don't have to love the camera to be a good quarterback, but I don't know. I think that things could go poorly for Texas and they could lose a game they're not supposed to. And I think the locker room situation between Ewers and Arch could really create stress on everybody in that building because at the end of the day, looking at things, I just don't. I mean, Ewers completed 16 passes of 20 plus yards last year, guys. That's it. That's the same amount as Graham Mertz on 8 less attempts of Graham Mertz. Ewers was 16 of 39 on 20 plus yard throws downfield. Like he's proven himself to be an accurate vertical passer or an effective vertical passer. Doesn't bring much mobility to things, and they replace a lot of receiving talent. I think they can, I think honestly what they did in the portal and how they've recruited receiver will be deep for them anyways, even with the loss of Mitchell and Worthy and Jatavian Sanders. But I don't trust their defensive line. And one of the best parts about SEC Media Days is that you get to go and kind of talk to people that know these programs and understand these programs and are interacting with people involved with these programs on a day-to-day basis. And the big red flag that I kind of took away from being in Dallas is that Texas is like really relying on Bill Norton to be the replacement for the two like first round defensive tackles that they had last year. That seems like a stretch to me. I know that he played well for Arizona last year in the Pac-12, and he did play well for Arizona last year in the Pac-12, no doubt about that. But we've seen him. Like he was in Athens for 3-4 years. Like he couldn't cut it at Georgia really. He never was able to really crack that rotation. Thought he was a good player. I thought there were times where he kind of flashed when he got on the field. I know that he had some consistency issues with work habits. Those seem to have improved for him with the kind of leap that his career has taken since leaving Georgia. But do I believe that he can go be like the nose and this crucial piece of the run defense on on a team that's going to compete for a national title, I struggle to get there. I hope, not hope, but necessarily, but like if he proves me wrong, that's great. I'll be happy for the kid. I hope he makes all the money in the world. I wish him nothing but, good things. Don't I just can't get on board with that. I can't get on board with a team coming into the SEC and they are replacing the best pair of defensive tackles that they've had in a generation or more, and they don't really seem to have a good plan for replacing them. I think they'll be strong on the offensive line. I think that, they will probably figure things out on some level in the back end. I think there will be some matchups you can take advantage of in the back seven, but I don't think it'll be totally disastrous or anything like that. Even with that schedule, and I know they have a really, really easy schedule, I could see A&M beating them. I could see a lot of things happening. I struggle with the idea of Texas. Maybe they make the playoff with 2 losses or whatever, but calling my shot right now, just looking at that roster today with the unanswered questions that exist. If they answer them, I will amend this take later, but right now I could see Georgia going into Austin and really having a good time down there. That's my opinion. LSU at 5. Look, LSU is the biggest like boom bust kind of stock here for me. I could see LSU finishing, 3rd in the league or who knows, 2nd in the league. Who knows? I mean, they've recruited well. Garrett Nussmeier is going to have to replace an incredible amount of production from Jaden Daniels. I think Garrett Nussmeier is a good player. I think he can be an NFL draft pick type player. I don't know if he's going to have like a historically successful offensive season, and I worry about them replacing those receivers on offense. I also that defense last year, the DBs, it seemed like they got those guys off the street. In some cases, they, couldn't cover anything. But I still think that LSU is going to workshop stuff. I still think that there are some really high-end players on that roster who can make differences in games and kind of be separation points that allow them to beat certain teams. We'll find out, though. A&M is one of the, maybe of everybody, guys, I would say the school the coach that I was kind of most impressed by that, and I've never interacted with Mike Elko before last week, but Mike Elko, excuse me, Mike Elko is a football coach. Like, that guy did not come to, create impressions on Twitter. He didn't come to be like hip or cool or whatever. He made a comment when asked about, you guys have been kind of quiet this offseason. He was like, it's my kind of inherent belief that football teams should play football, and then when the football is not going on, they should be working, and kind of that should go on in the shadows. Like, I think that he's got the mentality that Texas A&M is needed for forever. It's all about, we're going to show you instead of tell you, and we're going to come in and we're going to work really hard. We're going to be organized. We're not going to beat ourselves. And I think that they could be like the surprise team of the SEC. I could see them beating Texas. I could see them, coming in and really disrupting some seasons for teams that kind of assumed they were going to be wins. One of those teams would be Missouri, who I put behind them in these standings. But I am very high on the future for A&M under Mike Elko. I'm really high on the future for A&M after talking to some of his players. They all just believe in him. They believe in, the work ethic side of things. Last year at SEC Media Days, we talked to, I believe it was Anaya Smith, who told us, when NIL came in, we had kids that were coming in and they were saying, I don't have to go to class because I got NIL, and I don't have to do this and workouts because I make this much money. And he was just said everybody was just, that was all they cared about was how much NIL they were making. That erosion of culture that happened under Jimbo, I think has been fixed or is being fixed under Elko. And I think that Elko will just bring a level of organization to that program that really hasn't existed before, at least maybe in my lifetime. So I'm high on them. That's one of those kind of win totals that I'll probably consider taking a look at and taking a bite out of, depending on what odds I can find on it. The truth, guys, is like looking at this next section of the rankings where you have Missouri at 7, Tennessee at 8, Auburn at 9, Oklahoma at 10, Florida at 11, Kentucky at 12. I honestly all of those could be interchangeable on a certain level for me, and you could lump 5 through 12 into that. Like all of those could fall in a lot of different ways. I really like Drinkwitz. I think he's a really smart guy. I like what he's doing. I like how he's doing it. I just look at, they had the most draft picks in school history last year, and they lost what I would call like a lot of foundation in terms of those boundary corners. Like they lost a lot of things that I think are important to a football team, but not necessarily what the media usually talks about. Missouri, what's going on right now is everybody saying, I know Brady Cook. I watched him in a bowl game. He beat Ohio State. I know Luther Burden. He was a 5-star recruit. I know those names, so I'm high on Missouri. And those guys are great players, but replacing Javon Foster at tackle is not going to be easy for them. Replacing Abrams Drain and the other boundary corner, those guys were studs. Like they lose Tyron Hopper, who was a really good linebacker for them, Georgia kid. They lose so much on, they lose really high level defenders on every level of the defense. Oh, and by the way, they lose an All-American running back who was super uniquely suited to running the zone scheme that Eli Drinkwitz likes. I can't get behind it. I think they'll be good. I don't think they'll bottom out and go 5-7 or anything, but just I struggle with the idea of them being, fourth in the SEC or whatever. Tennessee, Auburn, like Tennessee, maybe they hit. I don't know. I struggle. I want to see Nico play some games. I think he's gonna be really good, but I want to see him play some games. And I want to see their defense outside of James Pierce. I'd like to see what their secondary looks like. Curious about some things on the offensive line. We'll see what happens. I think that every year that goes by for Heupel, his offense is going to get more and more off-season scouting time and install from other programs in the league. And every year that goes by, it's going to be harder for them to have success with that offense, much like you saw with Gus Malzahn at Auburn, look, man, it's Auburn. Who knows what's going to happen with them? They still have Peyton Thorne at quarterback. I think their defense is going to be good. I think they got some nice pieces on the offensive line. I voted Jarquez Hunter as the number 1 running back on my preseason SEC ballot. Like, I think he'll be better than some people are giving him credit for. I just don't know materially if that makes a huge difference in their record from last year to this year. I mean, I think they'll go better than 500 or whatever, but I'm just not positive that they're ready to go win 9 or 10. We'll see, though. Oklahoma, I'm selling massively on Oklahoma. I think they're going to have a rude awakening in the SEC. They're replacing all 5 offensive line starters. It's not the way to come into the league. I like what Venables has done on defense. I like what he's doing overall in general. I think Jackson Arnold will be a good quarterback, and all of those things will be, good for them in the long run. I just think in the short run that year 1 could be tough. Florida is probably really underrated in a lot of ways because of the schedule they have. If they didn't have their schedule, I don't think they'd be a top quarter of the league type team, but I think they'd be a top half of the league type team. But they got that schedule. And I don't know, Graham Mertz is super underappreciated in my eyes, but I don't know how you manage that really. Kentucky, I don't know, man. They're going to run the football and play defense, do what they do, and we'll see what happens. Other than that, Brock Vandagriff, I'm not as high on as some. He'll definitely add some athleticism to them, but I just think he'll also add some turnover variance and probably some, inconsistency. I think there's going to be a game or two where Brock Vandagriff's natural talent just takes over and things fall right and he balls out and gives some contender a problem. I think there's also going to be a game or two where he, throws 3 picks and misses some open intermediate routes. What comes week by week, we'll find out. It'll be probably some Vandagriff roulette if I had to guess. South Carolina, man, there is a lot of big talk coming from South Carolina for a program that, was sitting at home during bowl season last year. Coming into SEC Media Days, they put out this big hype video talking about we've never had an off season like this before. This is the closest team I've ever seen. We are brothers, all that type of stuff. Which is great. That's great. It's just that's a lot of talk. It's a lot of pressure to put on a team that, is not gone to a bowl game last year and is struggling, and the coach that some have on the hot seat. And maybe it's just a spot now where it's, hey, we're going to sell the vibes and hopefully that gets Beamer another year, depending on if things don't go so well on the field this season. I liked Alex Huntley a lot. I talked to him for a little while. One of their defensive linemen, he went so far as to say, we don't have a ceiling on our team. We're a playoff contender, all that. They really believe that they've got something special, and I don't think it's just coach speak from Beamer. They do believe that. They hired Mike Shula to help with the offense, which could be interesting with Lenora Sellers because he was the big catalyst behind the Cam Newton MVP season when he was with the Carolina Panthers. All of that could be great. It really could. I just kind of need to see it before I believe it, I guess is where I'm at with it. They don't play Georgia this year, which is certainly a help to them. They don't play Tennessee this year, which is certainly a help to them. There are a lot of things that will help them, but they're still South Carolina and they haven't recruited that well. And, they haven't recruited well for very long. I just think that we could be, sitting here in 6 months and talking about who's replacing Beamer and who's going to win the Lenora Sellers transfer portal sweepstakes, because I do think he has a chance to be a pretty special, talented player. Arkansas is Arkansas. Look, I'm not going to be honest with you guys. Love Sam Pittman. Think he's great. Think he's hilarious. Embrace the hog was certainly the quote of SEC Media Days, but I don't know, man. I mean, there's a lot they got to figure out there to get him another year. And I hope they do. I mean, genuinely, I mean that. I hope they do, but I don't see it. So they're 14th on my ballot, 15th Mississippi State, 16th Vanderbilt. I'm not really going to spend time talking about either of them because, to be honest with you guys, I don't really know much about either team other than I really liked Ricky Wright, the DB that Vanderbilt has. He's a good player. But other than that, I don't know much. Maybe we see Whit Muschamp at quarterback for Vandy at some point this year. Will Muschamp's kid. That would be interesting for Georgia fans. I've wondered if Muschamp might get a call from Vandy to come coach there if Clark Lee doesn't work out. But it seems like Clark Lee's in it for the long run. It seems like Vanderbilt's in it for the long run with him. They're doing the stadium construction and all that. I would imagine Vanderbilt has a legit booster who could really spend some NIL cash, but I guess they haven't been able to activate that person yet. So we will find out. All right. That's what I got for you guys for today. hope that was some good kind of wrap up content for all of you. Um, yeah, I'm we'll have a lot of stuff on the Dog Central site this week. We got an exciting announcement coming out for subscribers and really for non-subscribers too. But we are making a push and doing some things to I really think take the user experience to the next level and to take the kind of well-roundedness, if that's a word, of our content to the next level. So I'm excited about it. I'm excited to be a part of it. I'm excited to share more of it with you guys here in the next few days. So we will talk soon. And until then, hope you guys are well.